I didn't get close enough to hear what it's about, Judge.
Bring it, Judah. Stand by. I'm not gonna do that, counsel. When the jury's back in the jury round, I can hear them talking back there. I don't know if they discuss the case now. I'm assuming they follow my instructions. The same applies for his witnesses and the defendant. Same applies for your witnesses. They were separated, but they were not told that they came out and have conversations with each other.
Yes, Your Honor.
Each witness has a question. Bring the jury back. But you can ask. Questions, you can ask. Let me take the stand.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Next witness.
Matthew Clearlund.
Solemnly swear or affirm testimony to give this case to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. Could you tell us your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Matthew Clearline. My last name is K-L-E-R-L-E-I-N.
All right. Now, if you would, through the course of your testimony, please keep your voice up and speak loudly and clearly so all the members of the jury can hear you, okay?
Yes, sir.
Were you in Portsmouth back on April the 22nd of 2015?
Yes, it was.
And what was the purpose of you being here?
I'm a connector. I build walls.
A connector?
Yeah.
What's that mean?
Put the building together. I'm the guy from the steel that connects the pieces together.
All right. And you were with other members of a construction company?
Yes, sir.
Do you know Stephen Rankin at all?
No.
Do you know William Chapman at all?
No, sir.
Do you have any relationship to any of the parties in this case?
No, sir.
All right, let's go back to the 22nd of April. You were working, what were you doing?
The day it happened,
Yes, sir.
I was working on the roof. I wasn't on the roof, but I was working underneath it, so I was up and down the lift elevator.
Were you on any particular piece of equipment?
Scissor lift.
Right, and I think we've already heard that, but just kind of tell us about that, what it
A
is.
scissor lift?
Yeah.
It's kind of looks like a cart with sides on it. It can bring you up, down. You can drive around the job site so you can get up to the roof and go down and get whatever you need.
Is there a booth that you sit in?
No, you climb up maybe 4 foot to get inside it, and there's just a little control panel that brings you up and down.
Is there anything that surrounds you while you're sitting on this scissor lift?
You stand in it, but yeah, there's a railing around it, but it's only a 3-foot railing, 4-foot railing.
Right. On that particular day, was your attention drawn to the Wal-Mart parking lot?
Yes, sir.
And what drew you to that Wal-Mart parking lot?
Was my brother, who was actually up above the roof while I was in the scissor lift, was saying, oh, look, somebody's getting arrested, I think you're going to get tased. And that was when I looked over and saw everything in.
So you had not seen anything before that?
No, sir.
When you how did you turn to look? Did you have to get out of the scissor lift? Did you
No,
turn?
I was still standing in the scissor lift. I just turned around, looked around the parking lot, and then I saw the man trying to get arrested.
All right. How was your view? Was there anything obstructing it?
No, sir.
Was there anything between you and that scene?
No, sir.
Were you on the ground or were you off the ground?
I was in the scissor lift, so I was up maybe about 4 feet, but the scissor lift wasn't extended out.
Mm-hmm.
It was on like as low as it would go.
Right. Judge, may I approach the clerk and retrieve an exhibit, please? And may I ask counsel to assist me?
Amen.
And may I ask the witness to step down, Your Honor, please?
You may step down, sir.
All right, sir, I want to show you a photograph which has been marked and previously introduced as Defense Exhibit 4. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, sir.
Who took that photograph?
I did.
And when did you take that photograph?
After the whole shooting and everything happened, and all the police showed up and they started doing all their stuff over there.
What device did you use to take it?
My iPhone into my pocket.
Can you show us on that photograph approximately where you would have been on that scissor lift?
Where I would have been?
Yes.
There is another one that's a little bit better than this, but pretty much where I'm standing, I'm just directly down. I'm most like right below where that picture is. I wasn't on the roof when that whole thing happened.
Okay. All right, if you return to your seat, please. So what's the first thing that you saw when you looked over to the Wal-Mart parking lot?
Was the cop and the other man fighting
And where were they fighting?
next to the cop car, kind of like you're standing in front of it, off to the driver's side, off to the right a little bit.
And when you say fighting, could you describe that in any better detail?
The man was hitting the cop a bunch. He had something in his hand, which I figured was a taser.
Who had something in
The
his hand?
cop had a taser in his hand. The man was hitting him. They were kind of wrestling back and forth. At some point in time, I didn't see it happen, but the cop didn't have the taser anymore. They kept fighting, wrestling around. The cop finally got away from the man and drew his weapon on him.
Okay, now at that point, when you said he finally got away from the man, was there a distance that separated them?
Yes.
Approximately how much?
I would say about maybe 6 feet.
And where was the gentleman, the man? Where was he in relation to the police car?
Towards the back of the car.
And where was the officer?
Towards the front of the car.
Did you see anybody else in the area at that point?
No, sir. It was at 7:30 in the morning. Nobody's really out there besides the construction crew.
Now, how quickly is this event occurring?
A minute, maybe 30 seconds to a minute.
Or what do you observe after the two of them separated?
The officer drew his gun and had it sort of pointed. Didn't point it at the guy directly at first, had it kind of like that. And then the man charged him and he pulled up and shot him.
Did you hear any voices?
Yeah, there was screaming, but I couldn't tell you what they were saying.
Could you tell which person was screaming?
No, sir.
Did you hear one voice or two voices?
I'm pretty sure it was two.
The man that the officer was in a fight with, did you ever see him get on the ground?
No, sir.
You said that he charged him. What exact... Judge, may I ask him to step down, please?
You may step down, please.
Are you able to demonstrate to us what you saw the man do? Stand in front of the witness box.
Had his hands up and started not coming at him like he was going to rock him really hard.
Okay, go back in your seat. How many steps did you see him take?
Right?
How close did he get to the officer?
About 3 feet.
How many shots did you hear?
Two. One right after another.
What did you do then?
What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
I sat there and all. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before.
The officer and the man that was involved, can you tell us anything about their size and physical description?
The officer was a little shorter than the other man. The man was a big guy. Not tall-wise, but was very, very built.
Was he bigger or smaller than the officer?
Big.
Did you hear the officer say anything prior to the time that the weapon was discharged?
There was a pause when he had the gun out. It wasn't like he drew the gun and just started shooting. He drew, and then there was maybe a 2-3 second pause where I believe he might have said something and then fired.
But you,
After the man took steps towards him.
but you could not hear what he had said.
No, I could not hear him.
What did you see the officer do after that?
As soon as the man hit the ground, he went over and looked like he started doing CPR.
Did you ever see anyone else in that area?
Yes, there was another man.
And
That was before the shooting that I pulled up, was coming up behind the officer.
All right. Do you remember, or can you describe that man?
He was a tall man with dreadlocks.
And what did you see him do?
I just saw him running towards the back of the officer, then the two shots happened, and the guy ran back out his car.
How close to the officer did he get prior to the time the shots were fired?
30 feet.
I'm sorry?
30 feet.
All right. Did you ever see him standing next to the officer when the shots were fired?
No, sir.
Did you remain on your scissor lift? Did you stay there
At what point?
after the shooting?
No, I got down and went over and was talking to other guys.
Talking to?
My father, all the other people that you met today.
At some point, did you write a statement?
Yes, sir.
And how long after the fact was that, do you know?
I think it was about 2 hours afterwards, or an hour, when the police showed up.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Show you a victim witness statement. Does this appear to be in your handwriting?
Yes, sir.
What was your purpose in writing
The officer just asked me if I could write down a witness statement.
that? And what did you intend to do when you wrote that statement? What did you do?
What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote it down, just trying to tell people, just let them know what happened.
Did you write everything? Was that
I
complete?
object, Judge. This is bolstering. I haven't crossed him yet.
Did you write everything?
No, sir.
Why?
I was in shock still. I mean, I've never seen anything like that, honestly. We tried to even go back to work that day. I think we ended up wrapping it up at like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock.
And if I may approach and retrieve that, Your Honor? The details that you've described to us today, how sure are you of those details?
100%, sir.
And why is that?
Because I had time to think about it. I'm not, my mind's not spinning at 100 miles an hour. I know what I saw.
All right, may I return this exhibit to the clerk, Your Honor? Is there answer any questions the court counsel may have?
May I inquire, Judge?
You may.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, while you've been here at court, have you seen any of the other witnesses?
This morning,
Who all did you see this morning?
everyone that's come up and spoken so far.
Did you talk to any of them about the case today?
Yes, sir.
But you did mention that you talked to everybody about the case immediately after it happened on April 22nd, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you were all trading stories and comparing accounts of what happened, right?
No, sir.
No, you were not?
No, we were just all saying each one of us what we saw, how crazy it was.
Okay. Did everybody agree 100% on what they saw?
Yes, sir.
What, 100%, everybody agreed?
Everyone saw everything a little bit differently, but
Right.
I didn't know where you were, and then two people saw it when the man was getting arrested on the hood. And, like, I didn't get to see it till after they were already fighting.
Okay. Now, while you were on scene at the Wawa, you recall giving a statement to Detective Billy Joe Parrish of the Portsmouth Police Department around 8:11 a.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, Mr. Broccoletti already showed you that statement, and it's in your handwriting, right?
Yes, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
And you've already stated that you left some stuff out of that statement, correct? In fact, you, in that statement, you leave out everything that happened before the shots, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that statement is a total of 6 1/3 lines. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, sir.
The first thing you lead in with was, I was on top of the building working, heard gunshots go off, saw a man on the ground, and a cop doing CPR on him, right?
Yes, sir, that's what I written.
Okay. You said the cop was doing CPR on him?
Yes, sir.
And you're familiar with Paul Akey, correct?
I'm sorry, who's that?
Paul Akey, one of your coworkers, You remember the guy who was working the crane that day, April 22nd?
Yes, sir, yep.
And if I told you that he said that the cop did not immediately start doing CPR, would that change your testimony at all?
No, sir, when I saw him, he was doing CPR.
So Paul Akey is wrong when he states that the defendant did not immediately start CPR.
Objection, Your Honor.
How much time, well, you gave two statements to police on April 22nd, 2015, right?
Yes, sir.
First was to Billy Joe Parrish, detective for the Portsmouth Police Department, right?
Yes, sir.
And the second was to Special Agent Brandon Blakey of the Virginia State Police. You remember him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how much time elapsed between statement 1 at 8:11 a.m. and statement 2 to the state police agent?
I think it was about an hour.
About an hour? Okay. If I told you that it was 10:30 a.m., would that sound right?
I mean, it's over a year ago.
Okay. It's over a year ago, and you don't recall when you gave that statement.
Could have been 10:30 a.m. Not quick at all.
But you're here to tell the jury that your memory of this event has gotten better as time has gone on, right?
I think I remember the event happening, not the time.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I'm going to show you a transcription of your statement to that state police agent. Can you read that over quietly and tell me when you have finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that an accurate transcription of the statement you gave back then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you stated on direct examination today that the young man took 3 steps toward the defendant. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You do not state anything about 3 steps in your second interview with state police, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm correct that you did not mention 3 steps?
In this written statement now.
Oh, what about in the statement with state police? That's what I'm talking about.
No, sir.
Okay. You don't mention 3 steps.
I do not.
Okay. And you also testified on direct examination that the young man got within 3 feet of the defendant. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You don't say anything about 3 feet in your second statement to state police, do you?
He asked how far away it was, and he said he was about 6 feet away
You said he was about approximately 6 to 7 feet away.
when they got apart from each other, yes.
Okay. So back on April 22nd, 2015, it was 6 or 7 feet, correct?
Yes, sir.
And today it's 3 feet.
No, I told you earlier it was 6 feet away when they got apart. But when the gunshot flying off, he was about 3 feet.
Okay.
As he was coming towards the officer.
Okay. And you said that the defendant was a little shorter than the young man, correct?
The officer was shorter.
Okay. You also stated that the young man was very, very built. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, he was bigger.
Okay. I want to put you on notice that the medical examiner in this case testified that the young man was skinny. That's the person who did the autopsy in the case and weighed the young man. Would that change your testimony about how the young man was built?
Yes, sir.
It would not. You also mentioned that the other person who you saw come up to the incident was a tall man with dreadlocks, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you said that he got within 30 feet of the officer.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. And how far were you from this incident, if you can estimate?
100 yards.
100 yards? So the length of a football field. That's how far away you were? You agree, of course, that 30 feet is shorter than 100 yards, right?
Yes, sir.
So you would also agree that the man with dreadlocks would have had a better opportunity to observe the young man and the defendant, correct?
He was running pretty hard. I don't know what he was looking at.
Okay, but he was closer than you, right?
Yes, sir.
And if I told you that the man with dreadlocks described the defendant as being about 5'10" and the victim as being about 5'8", would that change your testimony about the sizes of these two people?
Yes, sir.
Even though the man with dreadlocks was closer to the scene than you?
Yes, sir.
So neither the medical examiner testimony nor a person closer to the scene than you, neither of those people's testimony changes what you're saying in court today.
I know what I saw.
Okay. And sir, you stated that you saw the young man with his hands up, right?
Not up like that.
Show me.
In a fighting stance.
In a fighting stance. So, but you saw his hands, right?
Yeah, sir.
Nothing in his hands.
Oh, I can tell you that. That's what it was.
That's all I have. Thank you, Deputy.
You have any exhibits?
I do. I don't, actually.
Counsel, who gave you those statements?
Oh, I did, Your Honor. May I approach the recusal?
You may.
Thank you.
Do you consider 5'8", 187 to be skinny?
Yes, sir.
I want to show the statement. Approach, Your Honor. The interview that you had with the state police on the 22nd about 10:30 in the morning, did you say anything to the state police about the movements of the man towards the officer or not?
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
What did you tell the state police on the 22nd about the movements of the man?
So he was 6 to 7 feet away and moving towards a police officer.
Can I get another further?
May I have your permission?
You may.
You were just asked about your state police statement in which you indicated that the young man was moving towards the defendant,
Yes.
right? But you've testified in court today that it was charging, correct?
Yes.
Nothing in your previous statements has indicated that the young man was charging. Would I be accurate in saying that?
I'm saying he's moving towards me. I wasn't arrested. He was road. That was after they had already fought.
But redirecting you to my question, you never mentioned charging before today, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
May he be excused?
Counsel Conley,
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
you may be excused, sir. Next witness.
Albert Clairline, Your Honor.
And which one this is?
4.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. Could you tell the jury your name?
Albert Clairline, Ford.
Mr. Clairline, last name K-L-E-R-L-E-I-N.
Yes.
I'm going to turn your attention back to April 22nd of 2015. Were you in Portsmouth, Virginia that day?
Yes.
Why were you here?
Wawa store.
Was that located near a Wal-Mart?
Yeah, it was in the Wal-Mart market.
What exactly were you all, which portion of the Wawa were you building?
I was on the ground floor when I had guys setting land and steel on the roof.
What exactly were you doing?
I was signaling the crane for the guys who were on the roof.
Did there come a time that your attention was drawn away from the Wawa to the Walmart parking lot?
Yes.
What caused that?
The two guys on the roof hollered down and said a cop was tasing somebody.
When you heard them say that, what did you do?
I turned around and looked to see what was going on.
Is there anything obstructing your line of view?
No.
And did you say you were standing on the ground?
I was, yeah, standing on the concrete floor.
When you turned towards the Walmart parking lot, what did you see?
When I turned around, the cop had a guy bent over the front driver's front fender. Looked like he was getting ready to put handcuffs on him.
What did you see at that point?
He had the guy, looked like he was getting ready to put handcuffs, and then the guy started, fighting with him, and like kind of jumped, spun with his left arm at the cop. I don't know if he hit him or not, I couldn't tell. And then it was like, they separated. The guy was they were both on the driver's side of the car. And the one guy was in the back and the cop was towards the front. And the guy jumped back, looked like he was taking his shirt or jacket off, and took it off. And the cop pulled his gun up, and this guy, after he pulled his shirt off, he had his fist up. He was coming at the cop, like he was going to fight. He wanted to fight the cop.
Did he actually come at the cop?
He was steady coming at the cop like he was doing like a street fight.
How did he come at him?
Hands up, he was coming straight at him. He was coming to fight.
Did he move slowly, quickly?
He was he wasn't at a full stride, but he was stepping. He was moving quick.
And what happened at that point?
And the cop, I heard 2 shots go off, and I seen the guy drop, and then the cop went over to the guy, and that was just about the time that was going on. There was a guy that was walking, like, it would have been my left, because I was where I was looking, and the cop car was like right here, and where it happened was here. There was a guy coming this way, and he came up, and then disappeared. All this was like all at about the same time. And then when after the shot went off, I was like, oh my God, So I want to see this. I actually turned around and started walking through the building.
The guy that you say you saw walking nearby, what did he look like?
Yeah, he had real long hair, like, I don't know. He was a black guy with real long hair. I really didn't get a good look at him. I was pretty much looking at what was happening. And then he disappeared after the cop shot the guy. And this guy disappeared. And like I said, I walked away. I couldn't believe it. I ain't never seen nothing like that.
After the shots were fired, what did you see the officer do?
He went over and got on the ground. And then that's just about the time when he went to, I guess, help the guy or do whatever. I was like right about the time I turned around and walked away.
Okay, I want to back you up for just a moment. At the point you indicated that the officer had the guy on the police car, how were they positioned?
The guy was, they were he almost like he had him bent over like you see on the cop show. Like he was getting ready. It looked like I thought he was the guy who was putting handcuffs on him. It looked like he was, messing with him a little bit, trying to get the handcuffs on him, and then all of a sudden it broke loose. That guy, it was like the guy broke loose from him.
And show the jury, if you would, what you saw the guy do with his arms. And you can stand up if you need to. At that point on the police car.
All right. He had the guy, I thought he had his arms behind him. It looked like he was getting ready to arrest him. Like he had it pushed up against the fender of the car. And I thought I said, oh, well, he's done with him, he's going to arrest him. And then all of a sudden, that's when the guy jumped back and his arm come around. I don't know.
His left arm?
Yes.
Okay. And what did his...
Basically, when they separated.
Did you ever see anything in the officer's hands?
No. Not until later on after they separated.
When they separate, you can have a seat. When they separated, where exactly was this man? The man that was in the encounter with the officer?
When they separated, the cop was like, come back here. This guy was back towards the back of the car. He was pretty much up near the front of the car, but they were over. They weren't like real tight to the car. They were over just a little bit.
About how far apart were they?
They had to, it had to be at least 10, 12 feet more, maybe a little more. Probably the length of the car almost.
Could you hear anything that was being said?
No, I couldn't hear nothing. I had two welding machines running like 20 feet away from me.
When they separated from one another, what, if anything, did you see this man doing? Could you see his hands, or could you see anything about his body?
Well, that's when he ripped his, it looked like to me he ripped his shirt or jacket off. Put his hands up like he was going to fight, right, and coming back to the cop sweating.
And when you say he put his hands up like he was going to fight, if you could show the jury where you observed his hands.
They were up.
Just below
They
the
were up
can't
like
see the
this.
witness. Could you move one way or the other, please?
The guy was up like this, and he was coming at him. It wasn't taking this sort of long.
Okay, you have your hands balled up in fists.
Yeah,
Is that...
He was ready to play.
Okay, you can have a seat. Do you know how many steps the individual took towards the officer before the officer fired?
It happened is I really, something that means something you're counting, you know, when you're seeing it happen.
How close was the individual to the officer when the shots were fired?
Yeah, he was right on top. He had to be, what, about 6 feet away, maybe? Yeah, I mean, he was close to him.
When the officer pulled his gun, did he immediately start firing, or was there time?
No, because they were separated. It was like when I seen him pull his gun, it was when the guy was, you know, pulling his stuff off and getting ready to come at him. So I don't know if there was, like I said, I couldn't hear nothing.
When the officer pulled his gun, did you ever see this other man get on the ground?
No.
At any point in time, did you see him put his hands behind his back? Your Honor, may I approach the clerk?
You may.
Mr. Clearland, I'm going to ask you to step down, and one of the deputies, I believe, will hand you a pointer, and I want you to look at one of the exhibits.
You may step down, sir.
Looking at this photograph, do you recognize what's in this photograph?
Yeah, that's right there is where they put that little black thing around when the guy got shot.
On the driver's side of the police car?
Yeah.
And where were you in this picture?
See, that's the picture at the top of the roof. I would have been probably just about straight underneath there, but standing on the concrete floor.
And where were the officer and this man when you first observed them?
Oh,
When you first saw them?
I was here and the cop was right behind. When I seen him, that he was trying to arrest him on the hood of the car.
On the driver's side?
Yes.
And you indicated there was a man with long hair at some point in time. When did you first see him, and where did you see him?
I seen him come in from this side, coming this way, is what I seen him from. And it was like right when they were getting into like the scuffle, the guy was probably like way back here. And then when everything really got all out of control, he was like right up around here. About the time that she was happening, he was getting closer in. He was actually coming. Now, I can't tell you exactly, but he was like right around here.
Okay, thank you. You can have a seat. Mr. Clearland, are you able to give an estimate as to how far away the individual with the long hair was at the time the shots were fired? How far from the officer?
20, 30 feet. He figured it with the car. He was probably 20, 30 feet.
Did you notice anything about the size of the individual versus the size of the police officer?
He seemed a little bigger than the guy, but
Who seemed bigger?
the guy that got shot.
When you say bigger, taller or larger? What's your...
Just overall, just a little bigger than him.
Judge, I would ask at this time that Mr. Clairline be able to step down to demonstrate to the jury what he observed prior to the shooting, and that will be my last question. What he observed, the movements that the man made. If you could have it step down for just a moment right in front of the witness box. You testified a few moments ago about the guy advancing towards the officer. If you would, show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what exactly you observed him do prior to the shooting.
Like I said, it looked like he pulled a shirt or jacket off, and then when he did that, his arms come up, and he was coming.
Okay.
He was coming at him, hands up. Ready to go.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. You can have a seat back. Judge, may I approach the clerk again?
Inquiry. Sir, what's your full name?
Albert Clairline,
And out there that day was another Albert Clairline,
to the fifth.
and he is your son?
Yes,
And also Matthew Clairline,
yes,
another son.
yes,
And that day all of you were working together.
yes.
Okay. In fact, they live with you?
Matthew does.
At the time, Matthew was living with you. What about Albert?
Still, actually, he still does.
Okay. Now, you're here testifying today. Other than that day, did you go over your testimony or indicate what happened to your son Matthew?
He's seen it, he knows, we.
No, my question is, did you
talked about
you have this talked about?
it. Yeah, we've talked about what.
And you've talked about it with Albert too, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Nobody,
And you've talked about it more than once.
probably.
And y'all went back and forth as to what he saw, what you saw. So now my question to you, sir, is what you're telling us today, is that a combination of what everybody saw, or this is just what you saw?
It's what I saw. Like I said, when I didn't hear nothing, I didn't hear nothing.
So when you were talking to them, you didn't hear anything?
When I said I couldn't hear anything between the cop and the guy.
I'm talking about with your sons. When you were talking about this incident with them, didn't you listen to them? Okay. Now, initially when you started out, you said that you were building the Wawa in the Wal-Mart parking lot. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Now, you've also testified that when you turned around and actually looked at this situation, you were some distance away. Is that correct? About how far away were you?
About the same as everybody else. I was standing right on the edge of the floor, probably 75 yards, 100 yards. Them guys are right, working right over the top of me.
And this building that you were working on was not fully constructed at the time, is that right?
No.
That person witness, Sean? I see you recognize that.
Yep.
And that's the area that you were talking about?
Yep.
And you can see the building that you were working on?
Yep.
And you can see the area where the incident took place?
Yep.
And you have this mark, it's a fair and accurate depiction of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They got this mark as Commodore 59. My apologies to the jury, Your Honor, if I question the witness further. May the witness step down so he can view the photograph?
You may step down, sir.
Now, can you point to a location where you would have been in reference to that building when you observed the incident?
All right, you see this hole right here?
Mm-hmm.
Right, this is the rooftop. I was standing on a concrete floor. This is a 6 foot by 6 foot door, and I was standing right there, looking straight through.
So you would have been at the door approximately on the bottom, midway on the picture,
At ground level.
at ground level.
Looking straight at it.
Okay, and where's the vehicle you said you saw them at?
What's that?
Where's the police car that you referred to? Right there. All right, and you were able to see?
You got a clean shot going straight through here.
Hmm?
I mean, it's, you know, you got
And-
something that big.
And when you saw this individual with the long hair, the tall man as you described him,
Mhm.
where was he at when you were observing this?
It would have been a lot. Like you see, if you're looking down from the roof, it looks like you can't see down. But if you're standing at the elevation, you're looking right underneath these trees right
So that's where he would have been.
I can see the whole parking lot.
But where was he?
He was coming up from the left.
And at the time of the shooting, you say he had gotten close to the car, is that correct? The police car?
Yes.
So would you point once again where he was right at the time the shooting was about to start?
Somewhere right around there.
Okay.
He was before the car, he wasn't right on top of it.
All right. Your Honor, for the record, that would be about,
Right. Somewhere like, almost about right where I got.
okay, about 5 inches down from the top of the photograph, halfway across. Correct, sir?
Yeah.
All right, you can have your seat again. So that gentleman was obviously closer to the area than you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And you indicated that when you observed the police officer, the man was on the car already, and the police officer was behind him.
Yes.
And then there came a point in time where both the man and the officer jumped back.
Yeah.
And then they were about at least a car length apart. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'm thinking close to the car, around the car length car.
All right. And at that point is when you say, well, right before they were a car length apart, it's when the man just jumped back away from the police officers, correct?
When he had him on the hood,
Right.
and he turned around and broke loose from him, is when they separated.
And after they separated, the next thing that you say happened is the man started taking off his shirt.
Yeah, shirt or jacket or something.
Took the shirt or jacket off. And after he took the shirt or jacket off, the man then started to approach the police officer.
Yes.
What happened to the shirt or jacket?
I don't know. I mean, this happened like that. I just know.
Well, you watched the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Until you turned away.
I'm assuming. It-
Well, don't assume. Don't assume. Do you recall what happened to the jacket?
No.
The shirt.
No.
What color was the shirt?
I don't know.
What color was the jacket?
I don't know.
All right, but you did say you saw the man with his hands in the air, correct?
Yes.
And the man that actually swung at the police officer, did he?
When he was coming after him?
When he came towards him. You say after him, I say towards him. When he was coming towards the police officer, he didn't swing at the police officer, did he?
No, he couldn't hit him. He didn't get close enough to hit him.
So he didn't swing.
Looked like he was getting ready.
Well, no, not what he was getting ready to and what you imagined or assumed. Did you see him swing at the police officer?
No, not yet.
What do you mean not yet? There came a point in time when you saw him actually swing at the police officer?
He was going after.
Did you see him ever swing at the police officer?
No.
We don't want you assuming. We want you to testify as to what you saw.
He did it first, but then when they broke apart, he did.
Okay. And when you say he had his hands up in the air, you could see his hands, right?
Yes.
And he didn't have a gun in his hand, did he?
No, I don't
Did-
see it.
Did he have a knife in his hand?
No, I don't see it.
Did he have a stick in his hand?
No.
But now, you say at that point, while the man was occupying himself and taking his shirt off, or his jacket off, the police officer drew his weapon.
Yes.
The police officer didn't reach for an OC spray canister. He went directly to the gun and drew that out.
Yes.
And the police officer didn't put his fists up in any way acting like he was going to fight the man back or try to repel him without using that deadly force. He pulled the gun out, right?
Yes.
And you never actually saw, in between the time that the man got off of the car and the police officer shot him, you never saw anything happen with a taser, is that correct?
No.
Now, the man that was near the car, what you said, tall black man, about how tall was this black man that you saw?
He was taller than me, so
Tall?
he was around 6 foot, I'm thinking maybe. You know, he looked taller than me.
Okay, so this is your perception of him.
Yeah, that's what he just.
He looks about 6 feet. Could it be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4"?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you got to answer for
Taller
that.
than me. Whoever the guy was looked taller than me.
Well, was the officer taller than you?
I'm kind of sure.
Sorry?
Nah.
He wasn't taller than
He
you.
was.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I don't think he was.
What about the man that got shot and killed? Was he taller than you?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm sorry?
Pretty sure.
He was.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how much was he taller than the officer?
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. Well, you first said,
You know, you're sitting there asking me questions.
that's what I got to do, ask. I wasn't there. You were.
I don't know.
You don't know. So you, so you could tell that the other black man was tall, 6'2", 6'3", but you couldn't tell how tall the black man that got shot was.
He was taller than the cop.
He's taller than the cop. All right, now we're getting someplace. How much taller than the cop? 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches?
I don't know.
Well, how much?
I don't know.
I would object at this point. He's
I mean, what do you want me to tell you?
I want you to tell me what you saw.
I told you what I saw and keep asking stuff that that's not, you know, I don't know. If I
Okay.
can't tell you something, I can't tell you.
Okay, and how tall are you?
5'10".
Now, the black man that you said that was there, the taller black man, the other black man, say he got as close as the car, correct?
Yes.
All right. And when he got as close as the car to the officer, did he appear to be healthy? He was walking fine, there was no limp or anything?
Yeah, the guy coming from the left.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's
no limp to him, right?
Seemed fine.
Could you see anything in reference to the way he was walking that you could say to tell the jury that there was anything in his manner that he was not able to help the officer if he wanted to?
Judge, I would object to speculation.
I don't know, the guy was walking.
I don't have to answer that.
I don't know.
Was there anything between him and the officer?
And he, no, the
No.
guy coming from the left?
Yeah.
No, not.
And now, it was the officer's side to you, his back to you, his front to you? What part of the officer could you see?
I could see kind of his side and his front.
His side and his front.
From where my view was.
And what portion of the man that was killed could you see?
It would be like the front, because that's how I see him go like that, with his shirt off, so.
Okay.
I know that.
And you sure he pulled that shirt off?
Looked like it to me.
Okay. And that's, okay. And that's how, just as much as you're sure, he charged the officer, or went towards the officer, is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, at the time when the officer actually shot this man, was the man as far away from me as I am to you now?
No.
Was he right up on the officer?
He was probably about, I'm thinking about 6 feet away.
So about this far away?
Yeah,
Closer?
a little closer.
Closer?
He had to be right about there.
Right
Somewhere
about
right
there.
there.
Is when he shot. You sure?
Yeah. That's what it looked like to me.
That's what it looked like to you. But your view was one of where the officer was the one actually facing you. So you couldn't see.
I was seeing the side of the officer and the front of this guy, of the guy coming.
And that's the perception you had.
Well, could see the side of the officer with the gun drawn and the guy in front of the guy.
So now, if you would have learned that the others that were with you that day have indicated particularly, you know who Albert, your son, Albert, the fifth. Excuse me? Oh, Matthew. Oh, no, I'm not talking about Matthew. Excuse me. No, the other one. Your other son, your son, has indicated the individual was 10 to 15 feet away. Would that change his testimony at the time the shooting happened?
I don't know what his testimony is. I mean, it's up to him. You need to talk to him.
Well, he's younger than you.
Yeah.
Okay. You would say his eyesight's a little bit better than yours?
Judge, objection is speculation.
So as this man approached, well, withdraw. And he's sure, as the man was taking off his jacket that you can't describe, the officer then pulled out the gun. At that time.
Yeah.
Okay. There was nothing that you could see the officer do to assume a fighting stance to get ready for the individual to battle him hand to hand.
The guy, I just what I told you.
Okay.
So,
And this gentleman had no weapon in his hand at all. The man who was shot and killed.
no.
And the officer didn't do anything like pull OC spray or put his fists up, anything at all. The officer did not do anything like that to attempt to repel or stop this man without killing him.
Judge, I would object at this point. You asked and
It's
answered.
already happened.
Okay. Nothing further, Ron. Yes, sir.
Sir, you testified to the photograph that was up on the screen. You said it was not very clear as to what you could see. Could you see clearly on April 22nd of 2015 what was happening at the police car?
Yeah.
More clearly than what was depicted in that photograph?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just so we're clear, what drew your attention to that location?
The two guys, my son and the other guy that was setting the stew up on the roofs, told me, hollered down and said something was getting tased by a cop.
That was the first time you heard anything about a taser.
Yeah.
You've testified to what you observed happen on April 22nd of 2015. How sure are you that the man charged at the officer prior to the shots being fired?
That's what I seen. I mean, he was coming at him. That's it. That's it. That's exactly what I see.
You have any doubt about that?
No.
Any other questions?
All right, now, you know, sees everybody's using, use this phrase, charge. I want to try to take you off the script for a while. You said a man was coming towards the officer,
Yeah.
correct? The man had taken off his jacket, and you don't know what happened to the jacket, and started going towards the officer. And he took 1, 2, how many steps?
I know it had to be at least 3 or 4 or 5 steps maybe. I mean,
5 steps?
He was from the back of that car to about 6 feet away from him, so he was stepping quick. I didn't count his steps. He was coming quick. So, that's the only way I can describe it.
Okay, so you're not sure the number of
Somebody
steps?
made 10 steps and they could be going this far each time.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say somebody took 3 steps and they were, you know.
But what do you remember?
I remember the guy I didn't count his feet, but I know the guy was coming at him fast.
No, go ahead.
Karen?
No other questions, witness, we'd ask that he be released.
Can it be released?
No. Yes.
You may be excused, sir.
Thank you.
Next witness.
May I see if Lieutenant Wilson is here? Captain Wilson, I'm sorry, Captain Wilson.
All right.
Chief Wilson.
Judge, may we approach?
Coming up. Turn the mic on. Don't get the jury. Come on, get the jury room. Maybe see. That's your witness.
No, no, Your Honor.
Have a seat. All right, Counsel.
Judge, as the court recalls, the Commonwealth made a motion to separate the witnesses and exclude them from being in the courtroom and from communicating with counsel at the beginning of the defense's case. One of those witnesses was on the Commonwealth's witness list, Assistant Chief Kim Wilson. She just appears as Kim Wilson on the Commonwealth's witness list. It's come to my attention that Mr. Broccoletti intends to call Assistant Chief Wilson as his next witness, and I have information that Mr. Broccoletti met with Ms. Wilson at the Portsmouth Police Department this morning in violation of the court's motion or the court's order that the witnesses be separated. So I move to exclude Ms. Wilson's testimony.
Judge, no, I did not meet with Captain Wilson. To be candid with the court, our investigator did meet with her to review the use of force material that she prepared. The court's order in terms of sequestration was merely to separate the witnesses so they're not present in the courtroom. Nothing about the testimony was discussed with her. Nothing about what the prior witnesses... Nothing about the prior witnesses or what was occurring in the courtroom was discussed with her. It is merely for the purpose of her identifying the use of force continuum, the general order of the police department that she prepared, and for her to be able to introduce it as a custodian of the records.
Did you not meet with?
No, sir, I've never met her. I just said hello to her. I met her for the first time at lunchtime.
Did your investigators talk to her?
Yes, sir.
Talk to her again about what?
She is the author of the general order that was in existence at the time of the offense in terms of the use of force, and she was the author of that, and she is also the custodian of the records of that.
But you had no conversation with her?
I have never spoken, other than saying hello to her this morning.
What's your response?
Judge, my response is that Rod Budd is on the defense's witness list. He's a defense witness. Mr. Broccoletti knows that Mr. Budd and Assistant Chief Wilson had contact. Therefore, this is being communicated to the attorney for the defendant. So we're having communication by defense counsel with witnesses during the trial about their testimony, Judge. It's about the General Orders Manual. It's about the use of force policy that Ms. Wilson authored, Judge. It's improper, and it's tainted the testimony of this witness. I ask the court to exclude it.
Discretionary motion.
Thank you, Judge.
Francis, we on cross. You have it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Hold on for a second. You said this thing too. You all have it in existence.
Can we approach?
Somebody must be. Ranger out, please. You turn the mic back on. Next witness.
Assistant Chief Wilson.
Solemnly swear affirm testimony in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you tell the court your name, please?
Assistant Chief Kim Wilson,
And you probably already answered the question, but how are you employed?
with the Portsmouth Police Department,
And how long have you been with the Portsmouth Police Department?
just over 20 years.
Ma'am, are you familiar with a general order that was entered August the 1st of 2011 by then Chief Hargis?
I am.
And let me just show this to counsel if I could. Can I approach the witness, Your Honor? Show you a document and ask if you could identify that for us, please.
This is OPR 1, use of force.
And was that in effect as of April the 22nd of 2015?
Yes, it was.
Now, when you said OPR,
OPR,
tell the jury what that means.
operational policy,
R stands for what?
operational.
OPR.
Yes, sir.
The letters mean what?
It's a numbering system that we have for all our policies. They're ADMs, OPRs, ORGs.
All right, can I approach the clerk, Your Honor? Judge-
I'd ask that it be subject to cross.
I'll lay a different foundation. Ma'am, how are you familiar with this General Orders Manual of August 1st, 2011?
I'm the one that updated it.
All right. And are you also involved in the custodian of the records?
I am.
And does this record, was this record kept in the ordinary course of business affairs by the Portsmouth Police Department as of April the 22nd of 2015?
Yes, it was.
All right. Judge, I'd move to introduce this.
Judge, I still object. I'd have some cross.
Oh, you get your call.
May I approach the clerk, Your Honor?
Judge, I have an objection to its admissibility as a business record.
No, no, the jury. Go to the jury. You may be seated. You may be seated.
Yes, sir.
May I inquire?
Wait.
Ma'am, you indicated you're the custodian of this record?
Objection.
Judge, I object. This document is not a business record. It's prepared in anticipation of litigation. It is a document that defines the levels of civil liability a Portsmouth police officer may face based upon the levels of force they used. This is proper in a federal constitutional deprivation of rights case, a 1983 case, Judge. It's not proper in a self-defense murder case. It does not supersede Virginia law on self-defense. I'm not saying that it's irrelevant per se. I'm saying that its admission will confuse the jury, mislead the jury, and make this case...
What part do you object to?
Judge, I object to the use of force continuum, Section 2. I object further to the administrative review and response, Section 4. I object to the procedures in Section 1 as well, Judge. They're all standards in a qualified immunity case. It's not proper in a self-defense murder case, Judge, so I object.
These govern the conduct of officers. These are how officers are trained. These are how officers respond to situations. And the Commonwealth's position, is clearly indicated through all of the prior witnesses, is that this defendant used excessive force under the circumstances, and specifically with respect to the OC spray, that he never used the OC spray, which the court can recall as an intermediate weapon similar to the taser. This general orders manual and this use of force continuum addresses each one of those issues which the Commonwealth has injected into the case.
May I respond, Judge? And Judge, the Commonwealth's remarks on the methods of force that could have been used, i.e. OC spray and the taser, they're not comments on whether the force was excessive. They're comments on, under Virginia law... Yes, sir.
I would allow this kind of on a mental case. And what Virginia law is a different subject. I would properly instruct the jury as to what the lawyer would expect to self-defense, or whatever goes to the jury. But as to the business record, this makes it, this is not the first I have come before this court on a mental case, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Motion denied.
Thank you.
Bring the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this point, I'd move to introduce this as Defense Exhibit Number 5. May I approach the clerk?
Hold it a second. Get back to the jury. You have a few counsel.
All right.
Next one, Karen.
May I retrieve that, Your Honor?
Right, here.
And may I publish it, Your Honor?
On the whole thing?
Well, no, I'm not going to publish the whole thing. I just want to show her excerpts on it.
You can do that.
May I ask Ms. Belot's assistance, please? Sorry. Make it smaller. Make it smaller. Yeah. Oh, I'll be bigger now. We'll just go page by page. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. All right.
You may step down. You may step down.
No, 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 no. All right, now, ma'am, this has been introduced as Defense Exhibit Number 5. Can you describe to the jury exactly what it is that we're looking at, please?
Essentially, every policy has purpose, guidelines, and then many have definitions.
Okay.
So this first page will outline that.
And this is the Use of Force General Orders Policy, General Orders Manual?
Correct.
And this is what was in effect on the 22nd of April of 2015.
Yes, it was.
And what role did you have in writing this, authoring it?
I would have updated it, and then once it was updated, I would publish it to what's called Power VMS, which is a cloud-based system, where the officer will log in, they'll read the policy, and they'll sign for it.
With respect, are you familiar, that's fine, you can have your seat, please, thank you. With respect to the training of officers as they go through the academy, what relationship do they have to these orders in this document?
They would not get introduced to this until they got into the in-house academy,
Okay.
with our agency.
And how would they be introduced into this, into the academy?
It's reviewed. It's always reviewed during firearms. It's always reviewed during legals. It's every other year or so.
And when we talk about, at the bottom, it lists use of force considerations. What does that mean?
Things for the officer to think about when they're in a use of force situation.
All right, I'm going to turn to the second page. Is this an order by the police department, by the chief of police?
It is.
For all officers?
Correct.
May I ask her to sit down again, Your Honor, please? All right, this is page 2, and it has what's called use of force continuum. Could you read paragraph A for us, please?
The department trains officers in the use of force continuum for guidance in determining both the level of threat faced and the appropriate degree of force to use in response to that threat. The department expects officers to use techniques in accordance with department sanctioned training.
And when we say department sanctioned training, what do we mean? What's that refer to?
Training is offered by the police department to its officers.
And how often does that occur?
Legals is done every 2 years.
Now, what is a use of force continuum? You can have another seat. I'm sorry, I apologize. In layman's terms, what does that mean to us?
It describes the various levels of force that an officer may use when they're faced with a threat or what they perceive to be a threat.
There is listed 7 different use of force levels. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is the officer expected to go from 1 to 7, or is there some
No.
discretion, or is it fluid, or what?
It's really not a ladder, it's fluid.
And describe what you mean by that.
That means they don't have to go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7.
And what would change them going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7?
The level of threat that they face.
We talk about number 4. I don't know if you can see that, but number 4 is what's called intermediate techniques. And I'll just read it to save you a trip down. An officer may employ intermediate force options such as aerosol subject restraint, ASR spray. What is that?
OC spray,
Or an electronic control weapon, ECW. What is that?
it's known as a taser.
When faced with a combative subject, or if soft control techniques fail to gain compliance and or the situation escalates. Now that has 2 intermediate techniques listed in that, correct?
Correct.
Are they, explain to the jury, if you will, what is the officer required to do with respect to those?
They can use the one that they think best suits them in the situation they're facing.
If they use one and that fails, are they required to use the other?
Not necessarily.
And why is that?
The force the officer uses is based upon the threat. So if, for example, a taser is deployed and the suspect produces a knife, you're not required to move to your spray at that point.
Is there any requirement that both of those be used?
No.
Number 7 is lethal deadly force, and again I'll read it for you just so you can save a trip down. The use of a firearm or any other means of force that can result in death is justified only, A, in defense of human life, including the officer's life, or in the defense of any person in immediate danger of serious physical injury or death.
Correct.
That's the last step in the use of force continuum.
It is.
And deadly force would be what? A weapon?
A weapon that would reasonably lead to someone's death.
All right, that's all the questions I have. May I return this exhibit?
May I inquire your own? Thank you. Now, ma'am, since you wrote the policy, you're probably familiar enough with it that I don't need to put it on the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. When is the last time you were a uniformed police officer on the street, I may ask?
Well, I have not stopped any uniform. You mean answered radio calls?
Yeah, when's the last time you were a beat cop, as it were?
At least 10 years.
Okay, so you haven't been confronted with a use of force scenario in 10 years, right?
No, that's not true.
Okay, but you haven't been in the uniform patrol, as it's called, in Portsmouth Police Department for 10 years, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You were asked about how officers are trained on this use of force continuum. You recall that?
Yes.
You mentioned that you teach legals, right?
Correct.
And in that legals training, you teach officers on the Virginia Code, correct?
That among other things, yes.
Okay. You teach them about code sections like the code section punishing resisting arrest, right?
Correct.
And the code section punishing assault on a law enforcement officer, correct?
Correct.
Assault on a law enforcement officer being a more serious crime than resisting arrest, of course, right? A felony versus a misdemeanor?
Yes.
Sure.
Correct.
Okay. You said also that the force is based upon the threat and it's a fluid scale, correct?
That's correct.
But as the person who updated this policy, you're abundantly familiar with the definition of excessive force, right?
I am.
And the definition of excessive force is the application of force which exceeds the level appropriate for the circumstances, right?
That's correct.
Okay. This policy does not supersede the Virginia law on self-defense, does it?
No, it does not comprehensive.
What did you say at the end?
No, it does not compliment.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You may step down. May she be excused?
She may, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
You may be excused. Next witness.
Michael Lyman. Yeah. Good afternoon. Tell the court your name, please, and spell your last name.
Michael Lyman, Lyman.
And, sir, how are you employed?
I'm a professor of criminal justice with Columbia College in Columbia, Missouri.
And how long have you been so engaged?
This will be my 30th year coming up.
All right. Can you tell us something about your experience with respect to police training, and use of force?
Yes. I have experience in a practical sense as a state law enforcement officer for the state of Kansas and the state of Oklahoma. I have experience as a certified use of force instructor full-time for a period of 3 years. And I also did some use of force instruction as a practitioner with the state of Kansas and the state of Oklahoma.
Do you teach the subject?
Yes, I do.
And for how long has that been?
For the entire time I've been with college, almost 30 years now.
All right. Have you ever qualified as an expert in any of the courts within the United States?
Yes, many.
Could you tell us just approximately how many?
Probably 150 to 175.
On the subject of use of force involving police officers?
No, but the lion's share, I would say, well over 100.
Have you testified for the prosecution in cases?
I have.
Have you testified for the defense in cases?
Yes,
Have you testified in civil cases on both sides?
I have.
Judge, at this time I would offer him as an expert in the field of use of force.
Judge, may I inquire? Good afternoon, sir. Sir, you are a doctor of philosophy, is that correct?
I have a PhD in higher education, yes.
That's higher in adult education and foundations, right?
It is.
Okay. That's not a degree in the use of force?
Oh, no.
Okay.
There's no such thing.
Okay. You don't have a master's degree that's specifically in the use of force either, do you?
There's no such thing. No, I don't.
Okay. Your bachelor's degree did not touch use of force, correct?
Oh, it did.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that was a
bachelor.
bachelor's in criminal justice, right?
Yes.
Okay. And a little portion of that would have been use of force, correct?
Some of the coursework.
Okay.
Yes.
Your primary occupation, you said, is a college professor at Columbia College of Missouri?
Yes.
Okay. You've never taught classes in Virginia?
No, I haven't.
Okay. You've never trained officers in the city of Portsmouth, correct?
I haven't.
You're not currently a police officer either, right?
Correct.
And you have not been a police officer since 1986, correct?
That's correct.
So obviously you've never been a police officer in Portsmouth or any other jurisdiction in Virginia then, right?
That's right.
Okay. You know that this defendant was a patrol officer at the time of the incident, correct?
Yes.
And you personally have never been a beat cop or a patrol officer on the street, correct?
I have not.
Okay. Your police work involved mostly investigative roles. Am I correctly understanding that?
True. Yes.
So you have never had the personal experience that beat cops or patrol officers had when dealing with certain situations on the street, correct?
I've had many of the same experiences.
Okay. But most of your expertise in the use of force comes from your academic research. Would that be accurate?
No, not at all. I've been through 2 police academies.
Okay, and those would have been back in the 70s and 80s?
They would.
Okay. Sir, have you ever testified in Virginia?
No, I don't believe so.
You've never testified then, obviously, in the city of Portsmouth then, correct?
I have not.
How many times, Mr. Broccoletti might have gone over it with you on your examination, but how many times have you provided live testimony in a courtroom?
In a courtroom, probably between 50 and 75 times.
Okay. And then, so the 150 to 175 times you mentioned, was that including other testimony?
Yes, depositions included.
Okay, so it would be accurate then that you most frequently testify at depositions, right? In terms of sworn testimony, like when you take the oath.
I think probably 51% or better, but it's close.
Okay. And you testify in many more civil cases than criminal cases, correct?
Oh, yes.
Out of the 50 to 75 times you have provided live testimony in the courtroom, how many of those were criminal cases?
I would estimate 8 or 10%.
8 to 10% of your 50 to 75 times testifying were in criminal cases.
That's my recollection.
Okay. And none of those times have been in Virginia courts?
I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry, none of those times you testified in criminal cases were in Virginia courts?
No, I don't believe so.
So you would agree that the great majority of your experience as an expert is offering expert testimony in civil cases?
It is.
Did you rely, and the opinions you're about to offer today, did you rely on any data or scientific evidence?
Judge, I'm objecting to that at this particular point. That's beyond the scope of the voir dire for an expert.
In the 50 to 75 cases you've provided live testimony in the courtroom, how many of those did you produce a report of your findings or opinions?
Most of them. I can't say all of them, but without a doubt, most.
Most, okay, so would 3/4 be accurate? Would that be far off?
It'd be more than that. It'd be in the probably 80 or 90 percentile.
80 or 90% of your cases where you provided live testimony, you provided a report.
Yes,
There's no report in this case, correct?
that's right.
Nothing for this jury to read your findings on paper.
That's right.
Okay. Sir, how many times did you say you have been qualified as an expert in the use of force?
I can only estimate probably 85 to 90% of what I do is use of force work.
Okay. How many times have you been qualified as an expert in the use of force in a criminal case in Virginia?
I haven't testified in Virginia, to my recollection.
How many times have you been qualified as an expert in the use of force in a criminal case, period?
Including when I was a practitioner, there were a couple of occasions. But I would say for use of force, 10 times, best I can recall.
You mentioned when you were a practitioner. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I was a law enforcement officer, I did a lot of testifying.
Okay. So, but you were testifying in your capacity as a law enforcement officer in those cases, not as an expert.
Not as an expert, but I think the nature of your question was regarding use of force, and I was asked to testify a couple times regarding use of force.
Okay. You've never published a book that's specifically on the use of force, correct?
I have.
Okay. But in your books, the use of force chapter will be just a portion of the book, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
So those books aren't specifically on the use of force, they're on police procedures generally, right?
That's true.
Sir, on your website, under the frequently asked questions section, you posed the question, is there anything in your background that would pose credibility problems for you in court? Do you recall that portion?
Yes.
And you answered that question as such, no, I have a clean record and background, both personally and professionally. You recall that?
Yes.
You're familiar with the Brady rule that states that prosecutors must disclose to the defense all evidence favorable to the defendant, right?
Yes.
I'm not sure where we're going in terms of his qualifications as an expert.
Judge, I'm about to link it up. Yes, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have at this time, Judge. Judge, I'll move to exclude this testimony. I don't think this testimony is proper in a Virginia criminal case. His testimony comes the great majority of the times in civil cases. He says he's never testified in Virginia. He has rarely testified in criminal cases where use of force is an issue. He said a couple of occasions, and the only ones that he mentioned.
Sir, go ahead, sir. speak?
Plain and simple, Judge, this witness is not suitable for a Virginia criminal case.
So you mean he's not qualified as an expert?
Yes, absolutely, Judge. I don't think he's ever testified in Virginia.
It's not suitable.
That's correct. He's not qualified to be an expert in a criminal case, Judge. Civil case, I have no problem with testimony. But this is an attempt by the defense to import qualified immunity into this murder trial, and I object to it.
We're not attempting to import anything into this trial except for evidence that the jury can use. Use of force is a factor that's beyond the common knowledge of jurors. It's a circumstance under which an expert would be acutely and exceptionally qualified.
You want him to be able to opine to the jury that force used by...
No, I'm not going there.
What do you want him to do?
I want him to look at the Portsmouth Police Manual that's been introduced into evidence as Defense Exhibit 5. I want him to be able to opine that that is generally accepted in the law enforcement community and with respect to use of force across the country, that that's a standard type of use of force continuum. I want him to describe the different use of forces 1 through 7 and just, for example, just give us an example as to what that means. And then I want him to be able to answer hypothetical questions. I want him to talk about center mass and shootings. I want him to talk about 2 shots. I want him to talk about handcuffing after the shooting. Those are all factors that are beyond the common knowledge of jurors. That if he's an expert in a civil case, he's an expert in any case. And there's got to be a first time when somebody comes to Virginia, or whether he goes to California. Or
Getting kind of close to the opposite fact, it will be decided by the jury. I'm not going to testify. Plus, he never testified at the next discussion. Okay?
Yes, sir. At some point, I need to proffer what his testimony would be then. May I do that now?
No, we'll bring the jury back out. We don't know. I'll let you do it later.
Yes, sir.
If he's still around when we break, I can let you put him on the stand. We'll go through it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to proceed.
Judge, may we have, we've been going for a little bit, may we just have a personal break for 5 minutes, please?
I give you 10 minutes.
Yes, sir.
All rise.